Before the world of Tyria, there was only void, the raw and primal form of magic that is made up of the 6 primary domains of magic: crystal, death, fire, ice, plant, and water. Appeared Lin Suan, who began to create the world of Tyria. With her breath, life began to form. She created 5 other elder dragons to aid her in filtering the 6 domains of magic in the world, and turned it into a state that would allow life to form. Krakatork filtered the magic of crystal, Zhaitan filtered death, Primordus fire, Jormag ice, Mordramoth plant, and Suan herself filtered water. The 6 elder dragons together existed in primal symbiosis, where the magics of the world are perfectly balanced as they each push and pull on each other. Through this harmony, the existence of Tyria could be preserved and life could thrive. Life on Tyria began in Mother's Lament, as Suan appeared and the 5 other elder dragons came into this world. From this spot, life began to expand across the continent of Cantha and across the world. Spirits appeared in the world and began to take many different forms. Each form of life and each piece of magic throughout the world are all interconnected through a system called the Antikytheria, which is commonly referred to as the All. The All is synonymous with the Eternal Alchemy, the central philosophical ideology of the Ceara, where all beings on Tyria are components of a much larger system. Every piece of magic is connected to each other. The elder dragons, the human gods, Aquagan, and so on are all components of the same machine. Each component holds a different weight on the system as they hold different amounts of magic. The elder dragons, aside from the planet itself, are the largest components of the system, as the 6 largest forms of magic flow through their respective elder dragon, and the entire system is balanced between them all. Beyond them, magic can be seen spread throughout the world. Countless civilizations have utilized magic in various ways. It is in fact uncommon to find any individual born without the ability to access and use magic in any way, but it requires a great deal of practice, training, and experience to be able to utilize magic in significant ways. While magic is typically invisible to the eye, magic can coalesce in various parts of the world and become visible. One prominent example is the ley lines that are spread throughout the world. The planet of Tyria is often described as a living, breathing organism, where the ley lines that run through the planet are similar to that of veins running through a body, but pumping magic instead of blood. The existence of ley lines is one of the most important factors for many parts of history. Various civilizations are more powerful the closer they are to a ley line or pocket of magic. One example is how the Orion mages were significantly more powerful than that of an Ascalonian, given their connection to the magic found in the ley lines and the elder dragon that slept below Or. Another example is how assurance technology, such as their waypoints, tap into the magic of the world, where their waypoints only function when placed on a ley line. Magic can be seen used by many civilizations throughout history, the usage of which has brought forth wars, caused destruction, and is a central point of much of the history of Tyria. If magic begins to coalesce in a significant way, devastation can begin to occur. Only a few species, such as the elder dragons or the chalk of the Muguma jungle, can safely consume magic. Most other races become crazed when they directly interact with magic. If magic were to build up in certain spots, the surrounding environment begins to deteriorate. The fabric of reality can be seen to split apart as the magic rips away the earth and begins to take various forms, such as that of an anomaly. If all the magic in the world were to coalesce throughout the planet, the entire system of the All would become unstable and cause the complete destruction of Tyria. It is thanks to the elder dragons who are able to keep the system intact, filter the magic of the world, and preserve Tyria. However, this system is not perfect. The void is the raw and primal magic of Tyria. The 6 primary domains of magic that the elder dragons filter and balance come together as void, and while the void has been split into its different forms, it still exists. The void acts to rip apart Tyria and return all life and constructs back to being in a state of primordial chaos, to undo everything that Suan set in motion. The void naturally corrupted the 5 elder dragons that Suan had created and drove them to madness, where originally the elder dragons were created as tools, then gained personalities as they grew, and then was eventually driven to madness. Suan's intentions were to have the elder dragons balance and preserve harmony, but as they became corrupted, the elder dragons became hostile to each other and their mother. A cycle of feast and famine emerged, where the elder dragons would consume all the magic available in Tyria, and then fall into a slumber for 10,000 years. As they slept, the magic they had consumed would slowly return to the world. As the magic had fully returned to the world, the Elder Dragons would awaken once again to consume it all. The awakening of the Elder Dragons are known as Dragon Rises, and with them brought great cataclysm and devastation. The world would tremble in terror for centuries as the Elder Dragons consumed the magic of the world. Earthquakes, tsunamis, great blizzards, and more would devastate the planet, and every civilization would suffer from the Elder Dragons, with many completely collapsing and forced to extinction. Centuries after each Elder Dragon rising, the Elder Dragons will have consumed all the magic and returned to their slumber. As the magic seeps back into the world, any remaining civilizations would be able to regrow, and any new civilization would be able to rise. As more magic is returned to the world, the people of Tyria are able to utilize it for their own purposes. Because of the destructive nature of Dragon Rises and how entire civilizations have collapsed over millennia, it is uncertain how many Dragon Rises have occurred, and similarly how old Tyria and the Elder Dragons really are. Today, we are aware of 2 Dragon Rises. Over 10,000 years ago, the Elder Dragons last arose. With the devastation that they brought, we only know stories and pieces of information about the conflict against the Elder Dragons and the struggles of civilization at the time. Many civilizations, such as the Great Giants, also known as Giganticus Lupicus, were forced into extinction. The Elder Dragons left their mark on the world, and most notable was an attempt of an alliance between the most prominent civilizations of the time to fight back against the Elder Dragons, which was ultimately a failure. Although the Elder Dragons have been forced into a cycle of destruction and regrowth, their importance to the All still exists. They are the biggest and most integral parts to the system as a whole. Without the Elder Dragons consuming the magic in the world, Tyria would shatter and all life would cease to exist. There then comes the horrible balance of preserving the world and preserving society. Within the last 250 years, the Elder Dragons have arisen again, seeking to consume the magic of the world no matter the consequences to the other races residing within. As new civilizations have evolved over the last 10,000 years, such as the arrival of the human race to the planet, the world as a whole is fundamentally different compared to previous Dragon Rises. With the defeat of the human god Abaddon, a large abundance of magic was released back into the systems of Tyria, which stirred the Elder Dragons to awaken once again, bringing with them devastation. In the year 1120 after Exodus, Primordus was the first Elder Dragon to awaken. He shook the very foundations of the planet as earthquakes occurred, and he drove the underground races to the surface world. Suwan followed shortly after, and decided that she would work to protect the people of Cantha in the coming centuries. Following Suwan, Jormag awakened within a great blizzard of chaos that drove the Norn and Koda south from the far Shiver Peaks, while also freezing the land around them. Zhaitan arose in 1219 after Exodus, and with him he rose the continent of Ur that was sunk by Vizier Kilbron a century and a half prior. Large tsunamis roared across the ocean that destroyed much of Cantha, the city of Lion's Arch, and potentially many other locations. In 1320 after Exodus, Krakatork awoke within the Blood Legion homelands and flew south towards the Crystal Desert, seeking vengeance against a lieutenant, the prophetic dragon Glint, who had betrayed him. In doing so, he corrupted a large swath of land through Ascalon and into the Crystal Desert that is now known as the Brand, while killing and corrupting all life within it. The people of Tyria were devastated by the rise of the Elder Dragons, as 3 orders rose to combat them and their minions. This series of events led to the formation of the Pact, and the eventual defeat of the Elder Dragon Zhaitan, but the people of Tyria did not know what they inadvertently had caused. In the wake of Zhaitan's defeat, a Savari known as Ceara had peered into the Antikytheria through a machine created by the Assuran inventor Omad. Doing so, she discovered the interconnectivity of Tyria and the foundations of the Antikytheria. She learned that the Sylvari were minions of the Elder Dragon Mordramoth, who were saved by the nurturing philosophies of the Centaur Ventari. Ceara was driven to madness as she attempted to bring Tyria back to its natural state by awakening the Elder Dragon Mordramoth and having the Sylvari return to his fold. She created great alliances throughout Central Tyria and eventually launched an assault on Lion's Arch to drill into the ley line located within the bay. There she struck the ley line as she was defeated by adventurers and redirected the magic towards Mordermoth, awakening him. With Mordermoth's awakening, his tendrils and roots connected throughout the world as he attacked and corrupted the people of Tyria. The pack launched an offensive on the Elder Dragon, which was largely a failure, but the pack commander was able to rally enough forces to strike the Elder Dragon down. With the defeat of Zhaitan, magic poured throughout the world. The Tyrian people did not understand much of what was going on, but Mordermoth had obtained some of Zhaitan's magic and was able to utilize it for his own purposes. It wasn't until the defeat of Mordermoth and the subsequent storm of magic that was unleashed in which the Tyrian people would soon learn about how the Antikytheria works. The assured scientist Tyria figured it out and simulated what would happen if the two elder dragons, Primordus and Jormag, destroyed each other.
The simulation is beginning!
The complete destruction of Tyria. Tyria needs the Elder Dragons to be able to survive as they filter the magics of the world and provide stability. But the corruption of the Elder Dragons caused by the Void forced them into destroying the world and the people within it every 10,000 years. Killing off the Elder Dragons was not an option the people of Tyria could make, as it would lead to their destruction, but letting the Elder Dragons run rampant and destroy the world as they consume all of its magic was also not an option the people of Tyria could make, as it would lead to their destruction. Fortunately for the people of Tyria, there was another solution. The Forgotten had battled against the Elder Dragons 10,000 years prior and failed, but they have learned much in their battle against the primordial forces and had survived that dragon rise. They then began to work to fix the cycle of the Elder Dragons and restore the world to a balanced state, starting with the cleansing of Krakatork's trusted lieutenant Glaust, who became the prophetic dragon Glint. Glint and the Forgotten would work together to set forward a cycle of events that would set up Tyria to be able to achieve this balance. Glint and the Forgotten had created the exalted and many exalted strongholds throughout the world to protect Glint's legacy, her offspring. 2 of her eggs would hatch and bring forth great dragons. Glint's first scion, Vlast, hatched within the Crystal Desert. Glint's second scion, Oreen, hatched within the Maguma jungle at Rear. Oreen grew a bond with the mortal races, most prominently with the pack commander who had safeguarded her egg and helped raise her as she was born. As the rogue human god Balthazar went to the Crystal Desert to kill the Elder Dragon Krakatork and gain his magic as his own, the pack commander worked to stop his path of fire. Balthazar had killed Glint's first scion, Vlast, which left Oreen as the only option to fulfill their mother's legacy. A legacy which was revealed to the pack commander as they explored the exalted city within the Crystal Desert, Keshel.
The millennia-long Elder Dragon cycle is one of feast and famine. Ravenous they rise, sated they sleep. Glint and the Forgotten set out to break this cycle of extremes and to restore true balance. But when 2 Elder Dragons were unexpectedly eliminated from the cycle at one time, we believe it created a void. A void that caused the system to break down and the collapse to begin. The hope was that Glint's legacy would stabilize the cycle. We theorize these vacancies must be filled with entities that circulate and share magic rather than hoard it. Only then will the balance of magic truly become stable. Only then will Glint's legacy achieve its ultimate purpose.
As Oreen was captured by Balthazar in an attempt to use her magic to defeat Krakatork, The pack commander is able to free Oreen and the two defeated Balthazar together, unleashing his own magic, of which Krakatork and Oreen had consumed a large portion of, empowering Krakatork as he fled, and strengthening and growing Oreen. In the wake of Balthazar's defeat, Oreen was able to consume the magic of the Lich Palawa Joko, and the combined forces of Tyria and Alona were able to march on Krakatork. A long campaign was started within the southern Shiver Peaks, and eventually ended within the newly formed island chain south of Or. Oreen and the Pact were able to defeat Krakatork, and as Oreen and the Pact commander entered the body of Krakatork to destroy the magic lingering within him, they began to learn of the true nature of Krakatork.
It's so beautiful and quiet.
If we succeed, what happens to you?
I'm not sure exactly. I can feel all the magics in it. They're not in harmony.
Child of my child. Come to me.
Oreen, what's happening?
I can feel his pain. A million agonies. So much suffering. What is yours? Torment is blinding. It lies. Its pollution steals my sense. It promises destroy everything, and the pain will cease. Remove this impure magic from me. These creatures make you weak. They are her strength. She is the first of her kind. You have laid me bare. The pain is ebbing. I'm sorry. It has to be this way, Grandfather.
Child of my child, I only hope that you never have
Do it.
As Orion and the commander defeated the madness within Krakatorrik, Orion was able to consume his magics. Orion had ascended into an elder dragon, fulfilling Glint's legacy and replacing Krakatorrik within the All. She became the elder dragon of crystal and light, and had the ability to filter the magics of the world without becoming corrupted by the void. And as Orion ascended, hope for the future began to spread throughout the hearts of the Pack Commander and their allies. The following year would lead the Pact and various other allies to combat the Elder Dragons of Jormag and Primordus, which would eventually lead to their destruction.
I'm coming! Hold on, Oreen!
No! We can't stop now! Not for anything!
Champion, I'm pulling you back!
Orion consumed much of the magic and was able to filter it, but much of it also went south, towards the continent of Cantha. As the last two Elder Dragons alive, Suwan and Orion had a connection with each other. Orion initially did not understand the presence of Suwan within her own mind, but eventually learned that it was the deep-sea dragon that many of Tyria had inadvertently began to fear, and was the mother of all of the Elder Dragons, the great-grandmother of Orion. As Orion and the Pack Commander found themselves in Cantha after pursuing the Aetherblades, they came into contact with the Elder Dragon and learned about her influence on the continent of Cantha. Suwan had helped save the continent from the tsunami unleashed by Zhaitan, and also provided her excess magic to help empower the nation. By granting her magic to the people of Cantha, she was able to resist the madness driven by the urge to consume more magic, which allowed her to break free from the corruption of the void. However, the Assuran Aetherblade Anka was able to absorb much of Orion's magic, weakening her, and shot that magic into Suwan. The excess magic drove Suwan to madness as she flew the area and attempted to take refuge in the Jade Sea. As the void attempted to take over Suwan, she constructed a barrier around herself to contain the void. The commander and Orion was able to rally many forces to march on Suwan and defeat the void materializing across the Jade Sea.
Look. The world is ending. A landscape of shattered dreams and death. And all due to me.
Suwan! Suwan! It can end here! It doesn't need...
The end will come fast, and death will be your deliverance.
As the forces subdued Suwan at the Harvest Temple, she was able to regain her senses, which allowed herself and Orion to talk.
I'm so tired. The others, are they safe?
For now.
I didn't want to hurt anyone.
What is this place?
It was the beginning, where I brought my children into being when all was timeless, cold, and empty. And with their coming, I watched as the world grew all around, full of hope in the warmth of a maturing sun.
Primordus, Krakatorrik, the others. They were all here as the world formed?
A while, yes. I created them as tools, mindless as nature, to stay the void's unrelenting push toward entropy. But here, so long ago, there was a time they called me Mother.
Suwan, I sometimes think about everything that happened to your children. If there was some other way.
No. They were bound to their nature. But in that brief time we had together, before their fated purpose set in, it was blissful. But the truth is, as I looked down at them, sleeping soundly, I was already mourning them.
What were they like?
Mordramoth was busy learning to cultivate the earth, his roots spreading so early. And Primordus? He never ventured out, instead preferring the warmth of my curled-up tail.
And my grandfather, Kralkatorrik?
Kralkatorrik. We will talk of him later.
You said you'd tell me of my grandfather.
Kralkatorrik was a hunter before he could even fly. Life had only just begun to form, and already he was stalking it. As an adolescent, he'd go out alone, and each night, I feared he wouldn't return. He was so young, fragile, stubborn. But each evening, there would be a gift, a fresh kill. And then he'd retire for the night, without a word. That's when I first began to notice the change in Zhaitan.
What change did you see in Zhaitan?
A curiosity in all that was dead. Jormag first drew my attention to it. But they had already developed their own fascinations. They were all changing. As if some last piece of them lay dormant, and one day awoke, forming who they really were, until they were strangers to me, and too often at each other's throats, and my own. We have so little power over what our children become. One morning, they were gone. It was foolish, really. I realized that I wanted to be a mother, Aurene. To feel that connection.
It seems you had it. For a while.
But fond memories are harder when they're buried by what might have been. Instead, all I became was a mother of pain, anguish. The mother of 5 dead children.
It wasn't your doing. We're all pawns in our own way. You wanted what we all do. To love. To be loved.
I suppose it's why I focused on mortals. Maybe I could be a better mother to them. But it seems like shallow folly to talk of love in the face of all that occurred out there. Now, please, leave me. Sleep may offer some respite.
The Canthan scientist June, alongside the Assurance scientist Taimi, were able to come up with a plan to extract the void from Suwon. They set up extractors at the Harvest Temple and attempted their plan. However, everything went horribly wrong as the void began to break free across the planet.
Are you ready?
I am.
There's truly no other way?
You know the answer to that question. Please, Don't cry for me, old friend.
It's time then.
Let it begin, little one.
Alchemy. It's working!
Of course it is.
Wait, something strange is happening. Power fluctuations all over the place.
The cycle ends.
We are truly awake.
What is that?
We are time. We are space.
It can't be.
Ritlock. Look out!
The hell is that?
Oh, spirits.
Gather the Zhaitan.
The void ravaged every area of Tyria and attempted to return Tyria to its primordial state of entropy. Aurine channeled her magic into the pack commander, and the two became one as they began to fight back against the void, eventually defeating the void, but killing Sylvain in the process.
Can I confess something, little one? I'm afraid to die.
I don't want to be alone.
I once thought loneliness was our burden. Then I met you. Your kinship with the mortals. Cherish it.
I do. I will.
I'm going to dream now.
The cycle must end. To be reborn.
As Suwan dies, Aurine is able to absorb the last of her magic, and by doing so, the dragon cycle ends. Aurine becomes the only elder dragon left alive in the road, and is able to filter all of the magics of the road and also resist the void, unlike what her 6 predecessors were able to do, filtering the magic in a way that does not require the destruction of civilizations and an endless cycle of feast and famine. With Aurine's ability to filter the magics of the world, harmony and stability can finally be met, and how this new cycle will evolve as Aurine takes her place within the void will be seen as the events of history continue to unfold. Thank you for watching this lore and story video about Guild Wars 2. I went into this video planning for it to be a bit on the shorter end, but I thought in order to do this topic justice I had to talk about everything that I talked about in this video, which basically ended up being the entire story of Guild Wars 2 summarized. If you want to support me, feel free to share this video with others because I know this is a topic that is confusing to many people, and hopefully this video explains it in a good way. Have a good one, everyone.